Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and today we're talking about the Pokemon metagame and how your team works with that. So, the meta is something that I feel needs to be respected, but at the same time is not something that needs to be followed because of the way that the Pokemon game works. That there are so many options, I just keep saying, probably over 400 competitively viable Pokemon that you can use at any given time, that have like some form and chance of doing very well on a team. And at the same time, the meta probably consists of maybe the top 25 to top 30 most used Pokemon, and maybe even a bit more under that. So the problem is there's so many options in Pokemon that you can't ever be ready for one thing. That even with the most used Pokemon, I'm also on sweepercalc.com looking at usage statistics of Pokemon just to get an idea of what the metagame is and just to show you guys how this all works. So the problem is this also is Smogon OU because there aren't really any hard stats on Battle Spot. But if you just look at this, the most used Pokemon is only in 17% of battles. Now, it is most used because it's a very strong Pokemon, Charizard, and it also has a lot of different ways that people run it, which does give it a lot of strength, and it's just it's a very interesting thing to look at the Pokemon metagame, because it is that diverse, that Charizard is the most used, but it's only in 1/5 of battles, which means if your team is only weak to Charizard, in theory, you win 80% of your battles. But you lose, well, 83%, and you lose 17% of your battles, which is a very interesting thing, because people, you need to respect the meta, because people are going to be playing a lot of these Pokemon. They even up to top 50, Sableye, Metagross, Gastrodon, Aerodactyl. Even these are Pokemon that you hear and see regularly. Salamence, Alakazam. Salamence is a very widely used Pokemon, and as you can see, it's only the 39th most used Pokemon, but it feels like, there's one every couple of games. And that's really why Pokemon is so hard to manage, that you can't be ready for every single thing. Because, you could build a team that works perfectly against the top 25, but at the same time, a lot of these Pokemon under it are still very common. So it is something that you have to respect, but I feel you shouldn't have to feel caged by the meta. You shouldn't feel like you have to follow the meta. You shouldn't feel locked down by the meta, because if you're afraid of the meta, then you're going to fall victim to it. Because, like I said, if you're afraid of the meta, if you're afraid of these top-tier Pokemon, these Pokemon that more people are using all the time, you're not going to either find the hidden gems that aren't on this list, or you're not going to be ready for the Pokemon that aren't on this list if they do come up. I was scrolling down. Where's Snorlax? Snorlax is the 81 most used Pokemon. That's only in 2% of battles. So 1 in every 48 battles, because it's 2.2%, has a Snorlax. And it's the strongest Pokemon on my team, in my opinion. That it's one of the most reliable, strongest Pokemon I've ever used. And if I was, say, only trying to pick from the top 75, top 50 to do a team building with, or if I'm afraid of all these Pokemon more, so I'm going to be defensive against these Pokemon, Snorlax can just walk in and clean up, or I would have never picked Snorlax in the first place. So if you feel caged by the meta, you're also limiting yourself, which I feel is very problematic, and it's a very bad thing to do, but at the same time it does need respect, because it's just this really hard thing to understand, that, even the top 10 Pokemon are seen about once every 10 battles, sometimes they're on the same team and stuff, and that's a lot. That people consider this high usage if it's only 10%, which is 1 in 10 battles. Because that's how diverse Pokemon is. So that's why it's really, you can't be ready for everything, but you just need to understand the metagame. That if you look at this list, you'll understand what direction Pokemon is going in, and you can either follow that direction because it is strong, or you can go against it. Now, I like being anti-meta just because it's how I've always felt. I feel I don't want to go with the flow, and I want to go and find the hidden Pokemon that people are ignoring because, if everyone's using top 50 Pokemon, it's easier to go, well, I'm going to use the top 50 because I get destroyed by these all the time. That if these Pokemon are always beating me, then I want to be using them because they must be strong, instead of going lower on the list and trying to find some hidden potential. Because at the same time, some of these Pokemon, they are weaker by default. Just the way their stats are, just the way everything works. Because, Cherim isn't the craziest Pokemon. You don't hear Cherim sweeping many games. You don't hear Cherim being in a lot of games, and it's in less than 1 in 100 games. But at the same time, Cherim has probably been mained on someone's team for a while because they know how to make it work. They've built a team around Cherim that makes it shine. So there's always a give and take here, that also by using the most popular Pokemon, you are putting the target on your back. that a lot of people expect Talonflame every battle, expect Garchomp every battle, expect Aegislash and all these Pokemon every battle, so they know how to stop it. Rotom Wash is one of the most popular Pokemon right now because it's bulky, so it can survive a hit from all these Pokemon, and then it can burn them. Well, these Pokemon, except for Talonflame, like you can burn them except for Talonflame because these Pokemon, they're weak against being burned. You burn a Garchomp, you burn a Kangaskhan, you burn an Aegislash, Tyranitar, Dragonite. You burn any of these Pokemon, they're really going to have a hard time, and they're not going to be strong anymore because you're taking away what makes them work. So that's why Rotom's on here. Like that, some of the Pokemon that are on here because they are counterpicks to what's popular. Also, Rotom Wash is just such a tanky and beastly Pokemon. And as you get down the list, you're starting to see more and more counters. Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn is the 21st used Pokemon in a very high amount of battles, even at 5%, because you know if you switch in a Ferrothorn onto a Kangaskhan, onto a Garchomp, you're going to do pretty well against it. That you bring in physical walls, and as we already discussed, Ferrothorn is a good physical wall. That this is where it all starts coming together, is because now you know what to look for in teams. Now you're already thinking about, okay, what does my team need? That what tanks am I looking for? What offensive power am I looking for? Mawile, very used Pokemon. It's in the top 25. Sylveon, special defense tank right there. Klefki is a good support. Lucario is a good sweeper. That, you know, if you just kind of pick out what works here, that we do have a lot of usage with tanky Pokemon. Togekiss is a good tank. Highest usage is leftovers with a defensive, special defensive spread. There's also some offensive spreads as well if you look at what's being used. And then we have Rotom as a tanky Pokemon, Tyranitar as a tanky Pokemon, Heatran's a tanky beast. My goodness. And a lot of these Pokemon, they just kind of work into teams, so that's where you just have to start. Like, I can't give you guys all the answers, unfortunately. And that's why I have a really hard time helping if someone says, oh, I have this, this, and this on my team, what do I need to make it better? There's just way too many dynamics in Pokemon. I could probably give the wrong answer because there's a better answer out there that no one's discovered yet. That new teams form every day that could break the meta or change the meta just because there's that many options out there, that a new strategy pops up and everything gets thrown out the window, and then the metagame changes, which is pretty awesome. So just, I say go. Your homework is go on this list. Well, first build a theoretical team. You know, think about what you've already learned. Think about what do you think makes a strong team. What from what list? You know, do I want 2 defensive tanks because there's so many physical threats? Do I want 2 sweepers? Do I want 4 sweepers? Do I want 6 sweepers? You know, start putting a team together. It doesn't have to be necessarily right. It doesn't have to be good. Just think about the Pokemon you want on your team. Like I said, get about 10 to 20 Pokemon that you want on a team. That are, well, you know, you can't have 10 or 20 on a team, but Pokemon that you would like to see, your favorite Pokemon. If you build a team solely around your favorite Pokemon, you can make it work, and you can win battles with a favorite Pokemon that might not necessarily be the strongest Pokemon. So that's what we need to start doing right now, is thinking about what team do you want. Don't be worried about the meta, but you still need to respect it at the same time. That once you've built a team that you want, you look, okay, what am I weak to in the meta? If you build a team and then you realize, like, oh, I'm weak against Dragonite, I'm weak against Heatran, I'm weak against all these guys, then that's when you start thinking, okay, that's what I'm weak against. I don't have to throw away my whole team, but I also have to respect that these things are going to be threats. Who can I take out? Who can be switched with another Pokemon? That if you're always losing to special attackers because your physical line, your physical defenses are so strong that you have that opening in special attack, or you are too weak against getting set up against, then you've tried to find anti-setup Pokemon. Pokemon we've already discussed about being special defensive tanks. You just need to keep refining it down, and that's really what this is about. You refine it with the meta, you also refine it against the meta, because you have to be strong against things, but you also have to be really defensive. Like, you have to be physically strong against the meta, and you also have to be defensive against the meta while being very broad at the same time. So, respect the meta, but don't be controlled by it. You can play picks from meta, you can choose not to play anything in the top 50. You can make that your challenge if you even want to. That's been my challenge for a while. I want to use as little Pokemon from the top most used Pokemon as possible, or I want to play them differently. I want to mix it up and make it to where that, you know, if I can find Pokemon that are in the lower brackets that shine against these strong Pokemon, I found my sleeper Pokemon. A sleeper Pokemon or sleeper anything is something that, you know, it's been asleep, it's been resting, but when you bring it out, it's been awakened and it is a very strong threat. And that there's a lot of Pokemon like that, just waiting to be discovered. That if you discover this Pokemon, then realize, you know, it's going to beat up a lot of these, that a strategy can really shut down a large majority of the most used Pokemon, well, unfortunately, you lose your secret. Secret's out. Now people are going to start playing it, and it might become a most used Pokemon. But you do have the advantage, because if your opponent's never seen it before, you gain an edge right there. If your opponent doesn't know what to expect, you can outpredict them. You can use that to your advantage. Be like, well, they don't know what I'm going to do, so they're probably going to guess wrong, and then I'll guess right and gain an edge. And then at the same time, you get huge satisfaction that when everyone starts using your Pokemon, sure, it sucks because you lost your edge, but at the same time, you just get to think, damn, that Pokemon's on that list because of me. Or because other people just started picking up. So, you know, break the meta, conform to the meta, do whatever you want. Just start thinking like about where your team wants to go right now. So, actually we're starting to talk about actual team building now. We're getting somewhere, so it's not just Pokemon. I also forgot to talk about Bruiser Pokemon, but we'll catch up with that at some point because they can kind of be integrated at any point. But right now, just go think about a team and think about how it works and start making your little changes to start with. And I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you all have a nice day.